Hey there, what's up, peeps? Generally, I would have a list of notes in the background somewhere or kind of build a mental list of ideas that I wanted to discuss on a topic like this. And I try to do that with all sensitive topics, if you want to call them sensitive topics. So when it's political or religious or something to do with, science or facts or the economy, whatever it might be, if I do videos like that, I try to, at least be informed on the topic. And in this case, I've been doing some electrical work in the bathroom here, and I just have had all these thoughts on my mind while I'm working that I just had to share now. So they will be incomplete, and that's where you're welcome to fill in any of the blanks if you feel. I'm open to all comments, all discussions, and I realize a lot of people out there are Christians, and a lot are anti-Christian, let's say, or very opposed to, religion in general. I know people from both parties, and I also know that being somewhere in the middle is a very difficult place to be, but I feel like it puts me in a space where I can actually give an honest opinion. And that honest opinion is that what is posing as Christianity in this country right now is, for lack of any better term, complete bullshit. And saying that as a self-professed non-Christian, so to speak, many would say, well, what do you know about religion? What do you know about Christianity? You don't know what Christ wanted. This is what it says in the Bible. I've encountered those people my whole life. And it's not just about what I've read about Jesus. Jesus, whether the man existed, whether he was a metaphor for Hermes, none of this matters to me. It's the message that was carried, which is take care of the weak, take care of the sick, help those in need, and just be humble and be a good person. These seem like such simple concepts, but they're really not, because of a very, very simple concept. They're completely incompatible with a capitalist society for people who want to get ahead of each other, who want to use religion as kind of a way to get other people to do what they want. Go put on a uniform and be a soldier and fight for God and country. It's for God because God loves our country so much more than other countries. Oh yeah, divine leaders, of course. Up until recently, it was believed and claimed that all leaders that were put into power positions were chosen by God. And you'd be hard pressed to really argue against that, whether you're religious or not. In other words, if it happened to happen, it must be God's will, right? Well, I could get into some crazy existential philosophical debate and call complete bullshit on that, but let's just say what I would consider falling from grace is what we've achieved in the West right now. Hiding under the guise of beliefs in Jesus. And ordinarily, I just let it kind of go by. The way that leaders will say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian. They'll show up in church once in a while and say something that Jesus said and pretend like they actually give a shit. But lately, it has, let's just say, the idea of Jesus Christ has been so twisted and contorted and warped to fit the agenda of people who want to actually claim that the enemy are immigrants, or the enemy are the left, or any number of enemies you want to make. If you're out there calling for any type of control or violence or forcing other people to think or speak a certain way, that to me goes against everything that Christianity is. And funny enough, you might be surprised, I listen to actually more than a few Christian pastors on podcasts and various discussions. Some of them who have, seen the error in their ways, and a few who are willing to admit that they had doubts when they go in and they speak to their congregation, they had doubts, and especially knowing that the whole idea was to keep the church business flowing. Look, whether this isn't about Jesus, I want to make this very clear, because I need to get this, at least give you this much. For those who might tell me, you just have to, feel Jesus. You just have to understand Jesus. Look, I have had in my life, a very intense Christ experience, which led me, no doubt, that if Jesus exists in any form, that was the form that I experienced. And it was wonderful, it was golden, it was beautiful, it gave me the answers I wanted, it was the perfect moment, let's say. And I haven't shared that with anybody, really. I've mentioned it to a couple of people, but even just trying to explain that is lunacy to people. They won't get it, they can't get it, and that's okay, because it's a very personal experience. But that direct experience, or gnosis, as some might call it, it wasn't about words. It was about understanding. And that understanding was to do the best I can in my life, to be a good person, to be kind, to work hard, but to also be able to forgive myself, to forgive others, to realize that other people around me have their faults and that it's just okay. It's all okay, all right? The only time it's not okay is when people are scared and guilty and fearful. And that is exactly what they're using Christ for these days. The idea of, you'll be punished eternally. But hey, come to our church and we'll tell you how to read the Bible, but we won't, have any interest if you decide to read that Bible for yourself, come up with your own conclusion. No, sorry. The church says differently. And not all churches are created equal. It's my belief the Catholic Church is, let's just say, one of the biggest controlling and greedy institutions out there. I know people will disagree with that and say, oh, they do charities. I'm sorry, but the Vatican is a highly enriched, they are so scared of letting go of their gold. Any church worth its weight, any group who truly believes that God is the answer, these are the people, the ones who really believe it, especially the fanatics, they tend to just give all their stuff away because they realize, it's not about the things you have. But the churches have learned over the years that the only way to keep the coffers flowing and keep the collection plate moving is by getting kids when they're young, getting them into these little, these little church schools where they learn how to color pictures of Noah's Ark so they can learn how God decided to just kill everyone off on the whole planet except Noah and his animals. And, you think that the kids, to them it's just a story. Bullshit. It's a complete lack of regard for what God really would be. And if God is willing to destroy his own whole creation because he fucked up, this should make people realize it's not that religion is the problem. I should say it is that religion is the problem, but it's not that belief is the problem. Because my experience with God, I should say my experience with Christ, and I don't say Jesus, I say Christ. And I don't want to get into the semantics of this. I've done lots of videos about this, believe it or not, in the past. Probably 10 years ago, I was really interested in Gnosticism, and I thought I understood what it was until I experienced direct Gnosticism, gnosis. It was intense. It was asked for. I had wanted to seek this, and I attained it, but the message I got was not comforting. It was that you're alone on this path. I'm pretty much a pacifist, in the sense of not trying to push other people into my beliefs or convince them of anything. Let's put it this way, I'm so confident in my belief in God that I don't even talk about it because I don't care. But I should. And this is where it gets weird, because I know that many people who have had a very religious experience, they've had a very similar experience, but they might attribute it to a specific church or a belief system. And that can be okay too. if you're really following the teachings of Jesus, to be humble. Jesus was not this modern version of this rippling muscled guy. I mean, that's kind of a half joke, but no, people really do make t-shirts and flags like that with, they want Jesus to be the tough guy with an AK-47 that fights off communists and kicks out immigrants. Unfortunately, if you think that about Jesus, you're wrong. You're absolutely 100% wrong. And if Jesus in the form of Jesus that you're claiming to worship returned right now, he would be absolutely disgusted by that and appalled, and you would be embarrassed. To chastise a group of people because they're different than you. Oh, they're here illegally. Okay, well, we've addressed this over the years by having court systems. This is why it's not a felony to be here illegally. It's a fucking immigrant country, okay? Yeah, we need to change things. But the idea that you can just have masked men running through the streets, throwing these guys out, and you have these Christian groups cheering for this stuff, you're gross. You're gross. And it's appalling to me. I'm still trying to make sense of it. And after listening to many pastors, I've understood that it comes down to them believing that they're always under threat. This fear of persecution. And I didn't really take that too seriously, as much in the past. I'd hear this Christian say, oh, we're being persecuted. And I was like, really? I mean, you have these Christian nationalists in control of like every branch of government, and you're telling me that you're persecuted? Yeah, this just doesn't make sense to me. There's something else going on here. And upon closer analysis, I realized it's personal guilt being manifested upon the entirety of society. It's a personal lack of attention. A lot of folks don't feel like they have done the right thing in their lives, or maybe they wish they'd done more, or that they could get more or have more, whatever it might be. But having a belief system in a group, they don't realize it's about the community. Community is what matters most to people. Community, bonding together with other people. You're better off going to a sewing circle of people who are like, at least interesting and have things to talk about than going to a church every week, once a week. So you can get all dolled up in the morning, and don't pretend like that's not the case. I've heard so many Christians say that. Yeah, everybody gets up on Sunday, puts on their Sunday best, gets all dressed up and goes to the church. Who are you trying to impress? God sees you every fucking day. God sees you every moment. Every moment you're walking this earth, whether you're taking a shit or a shower or a shave, or just standing there in your bathrobe doing nothing on a Saturday. Going dressed up nicely on Sunday doesn't buy your way into heaven. And this excuse that Jesus died for our sins, so somehow we can just sin, is gross. I've always said that the person who thinks that they can sin and then be forgiven before they die is about the farthest from any religion or Jesus teaching that you could get. If you are aware that you're doing things wrong, then you're wrong. And, I know maybe I'm being a little animated here, but I've heard so much bullshit lately. So much bullshit coming out of so many different institutions, And even to bring this up, I probably shouldn't bring up Turning Point USA, because of what happened to Charlie Kirk. It was horrible. He was a young man that maybe would have changed his mind later down the line. Just like some of the pastors I listened to. One of the guys said he was just like Charlie. He used to believe this and think the problem was everybody else. Not realizing the problem is within the church. The problem is within the way that we think about other people as people. And the fact that Christian nationalism is toxic because Jesus doesn't prefer a nation. God doesn't prefer a nation. It doesn't work that way. People can disagree, and they're welcome to. I say that it's a sin in itself to believe that you are better than anyone else. So, can you believe that there are some horrible people on earth? Sure. But it seems like we think the good people are the bad people, and the bad people are somehow the good people. This is why my mind is so blown as to how people can look aside when they have a president, for example, that has lied more than any other president in office. And when you mention this, they say, name one thing he's lied about. Or he's an honest guy. Or finally, in the end, it's like, well, he's just funny like that. He's just doing what he has to. It's for the country. But I'm like, here's a guy who pretends to be a Christian, and the Christians aren't calling him out. And I start to wonder how many of these people, even if they really think they believe what they believe, have ever felt that Christ consciousness, that awareness within them, that spark, that gold light that just radiates. And it sounds silly. I don't care. It's the most divine experience I've had in my life. And I thought I got it for a minute, and I was knocked down a peg. It's like, no. It's not about the symbols. You might notice sometimes I wear a cross, sometimes a rosy cross. And that's more for a reminder for myself, not because I feel like I'm being, watched and I'm a good Christian with my cross on or something. Like you've got these, like that Caroline Levitt or whatever that speaks, just stands up there and just lies to the American public with a cross on. And this is why I'm speaking up. It's not just because of the politics. It's definitely not just Trump and the current administration. Trump doesn't even really pretend to be a Christian. He does a horrible job at it, but people think he is. It's weird. But look, I've done my best duty as a human to read the Bible as much as I can. I'm not very far into it, but I did read Revelation a couple times. Once, the first time when I was 16, I wanted to understand what it meant, so I read it. Still trying to process that one. But as I mentioned in a post I made the other day, and reading Revelation, you'll find one thing is not in there. That's the word Antichrist. And I say that because a lot of Christians, they want to pick out the most negative possible aspects they can. Oh, Jesus, he said to die by the sword, and he said slaves should obey their masters and kids should obey their parents. Well, did they ever mention that they should also be treated with respect, and that kids are considered God's children and they should be never angered by their parents on purpose? People just selective bullshit. They pull out what they want and they just leave the rest behind. But Revelation says nothing at all about the Antichrist. And then you have one of the most powerful people in the world, Peter Thiel, running Palantir, which by mentioning his name and Palantir, AI's probably already scanned this video and put me into some hit list, half joking. But this guy has spent a lot of time researching what he claims is the Antichrist. He can't see it in front of his fucking eyes. This dude who has more money and more access to people's data than like anybody in the world, who claims to be a Christian, that's looking for the Antichrist, actively seeking the Antichrist, probably has never even read the Bible. And I'm guessing that because he has no real understanding of what an Antichrist even means, because most people don't. I believe it's only mentioned 4 times in the Bible, and it's mentioned as an idea, not a person, because people want that fear. They're guilty. They want a rival for Jesus to beat. I hate to put it that simply, but that's just how it is. And they also, unfortunately, can't find that rival, so they want to make a rival out of their neighbors and make enemies out of their friends, their family, because they believe differently, they think differently. And that's fine too, because we can all believe what we want. The part that gets me is the fake Christianity. And I think we should all be able to call it out. I'm not being a pastor or a priest myself, I guess, who am I to speak? But for all those who are calling out the depravity of, let's say, the left, or allowing things to flourish in this country, or gay marriage, let's just look at what the church has done for a minute. Let's just look at how many perverts the church is hiding, how many pedos they have protected and sent off to other countries to work for a different part of the church so they can't get prosecuted, or how the Catholic Church has actively fought against people trying to prosecute, or how the Catholic Church actively tells their members, do not report these things to the police, report them to us and we will make sure this priest is gone. And then they send him to another congregation, probably in a third world country where they can better rape and pillage legally. And that sounds cynical, and it is, but it's true. And these very people in power also have access to one specific list that we all know contains some of the world's most powerful people who probably claim to be Christians. And many of these people are on a list which claims they went to an island and did things with kids that were underage, procuring little girls. And to even bring that up is gross, but you've got to see where I'm coming from here. They are protecting pedos. Whether they are on the list or not, I don't care. We know what's happening. I'm never going to look away from this. I'm never going to look away from how bad it really is. I remember Eyes Wide Shut, movies like that. I don't even remember watching the whole thing, but the whole premise of it and all the things I've read about the depravity and the corruption, it's always placed on the left. I'm starting to see that there's a lot of fucking projection going on here by these so-called Christian conservatives. So, I think I got it out of my system. It's gross. My experience with Christ is nothing like theirs. And I believe that they have, at the very least, fallen into some personal demons. So, with that said, I will continue what I think is right, continue to do what I think is right, and I'm not one that's trying to live in Jesus' footsteps. I just want to go by what I know is right, and I agree with his principles. I agree with what I was taught about Jesus and what I've learned about Jesus, that he taught humility and strength through personal accountability. That's not very sexy for people. No, it doesn't work with the Western way of life. And to follow that path is a lonely one, and I know many of you are. Many of you are humble, many of you understand these things. So stick with it. Don't buy into it. Don't get sucked into the bullshit and the division and the hate. Just know that you're living right. Others may not agree. Fuck them. Do what you know is right. Follow your heart. Peace and love, my friends. I gotta get back to work. Be well.